business plan and looking for a brick and mortar shop.
Okay. All right. Can we, whoever the next person is, if you'd like to, say who you are and what you'd like to do. Randy, maybe you can kind of see who else is out there.
Yep. I'm sorry. Was that Belinda who just spoke or Aaliyah?
It was Edla.
Edla, sorry. My apologies. All right. Belinda Goodwin?
Yes, I'm Belinda, and looking at starting a driving school and at the startup phase as well, writing the business plan and getting all the registering with the state and all that.
Beautiful. Great. Thank you, Belinda. That's something we can definitely help you with at the Hispanic Business Center. Ebony Baskerville?
Yes. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes, we can.
Okay. I am actually, I started a new business this year, and I do real estate and construction. So I'm just looking for any kind of way to help find funds for my business, because it seems like with me having a new business, I guess since August or July, I started the business, and it's been really hard to get funding for this business.
Interesting. Okay.
Okay. Sandra or Sandra? Your mic is currently muted, but we'd love to hear from you. Okay, what about Eva Velez?
Hi, good afternoon. I am a nail technician or cosmetologist. I do hair and nails for the last 5 years. I've been working in my basement, and I've been just working on focusing on just building clientele. And I'm ready to finally, move on up in the world and actually become a legit hair and nail salon. And I'm just in this meeting so I can figure out how to do that and how to get started and move on to the next step of my career.
Okay.
Beautiful, Eva. We have Stephanie as well, but I don't see a microphone icon for you. Okay, and Sandra, do you want to give us a quick intro? Okay, we'll move on then. All right, Ray, that's who we have.
All right, good. Well, thanks for everybody for introducing yourself. Again, as I said, I'm Ray Graves with the SBA. If you get nothing else out of this presentation, I hope you will give me a call and call on me and ask questions as you need to. Let's see here. I hope you're able to see my screen. I just was trying to click forward and.
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, good. Let's see if I can advance the slides. All right, there you go. So there's my name and phone number and so on. So 216-522-4192 is my direct line, raymond.graves@sba.gov. And you'll find, if you email me, I'm responsive. I'd love to hear from folks, and we'll help you if I can. That's part of the job here, so it's certainly no imposition at all to give us a call and ask what opportunities might be available from the federal government. What I wanted to cover today was a couple of bullet points here. I wanted to talk about SBA background. We'll talk maybe a little bit about the SBA's COVID-19 loan programs and the historical programs that are still going today that small business owners can utilize. I want to talk a little bit about business planning, and then spend some time leaning into the lending process, answering questions like this. How do I get a loan? What documents are required? How much money can I get? And how much time will it take? So hopefully those are questions you all have, but if you have other questions, I'd encourage you to jump in and make sure that your questions are answered, because that's why we're here today. So just sort of our marketing pitch is that the SBA, U.S. Small Business Administration, makes the American dream of business a virtual reality. We like to see all the small business owners and entrepreneurs out there perfect their 15-second elevator speeches, and that's ours. We make the dream of business ownership a reality. We empower entrepreneurs and small business owners with the resources and support they need to start and grow their businesses. We're the go-to resource and voice for small business, backed by the strength and reach of the federal government. And no matter what stage you are in your business journey, the SBA has a solution for you. And that's including starting, growing, expanding, and really significantly since March, recovering businesses. So one of the things that is usually on top of mind for folks when I'm talking to them is the SBA's disaster relief programs. And I'm not sure whether anyone on the call utilized any of these or would be able to, but just very briefly, we had three programs that came through for dealing with the COVID-19 crisis. One is SBA debt relief, and that was that program is expired, but it basically made 6 months of payments available to anybody who had an SBA loan in the past. The Economic Injury Disaster Loan, or EIDL, EIDL, is currently available. It is a direct loan from the government. It is a working capital loan. The idea is, give businesses the amount of working capital they need to get through the crisis. So it's X number of months of working capital, with X being some figure that the agency has come up with. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but 8 to 10 months of working capital might be what your award would be. And you apply for these things directly through the government. Now, this isn't going to be for startups. It has to be a business that was in business before the crisis began. But the real nice thing about these economic injury disaster loans, these EIDL loans, is that you get a really long time to pay them off. You get a 30-year repayment period on them, which is almost like the length that you would have for like a home mortgage or something. And that's very unusual for a working capital loan. Working capital, by the way, is just like cash for your business for its operating needs. It's not for equipment or real estate purchases. No collateral is required on these, up to $25,000. Above that, a UCC lien is placed. Personal guarantees are usually not required on these things. For a long time, there was a grant that was a component of these EIDLs, but that has actually expired now as well. The maximum loan an EIDL can do is $2 million. So again, an existing business that just needs some assistance, some working capital to get over this troublous period, an economic injury disaster loan is a great way to go. There are millions of applications for these EIDL funds, and although there's billions allocated to it, I am aware that there's a significant backlog. So, if you apply, or if you're talking to a business owner in your neighborhood, or a friend or a family member who has a business that wants to apply, just bear in mind that it might be a little bit of a wait to get these funds. More significantly in the news, you may have heard of the SBA being active with something called the PPP, which is the Paycheck Protection Program. No new loans are being made right now. Many PPP borrowers are in their forgiveness phase right now, which means that they're applying through their banks for forgiveness on their loans. And that forgiveness is going to be a federal payment to their bank that will then make their loan essentially converted into a grant. Does anyone have a PPP loan? Anyone who's on the call? Or an EIDL? Okay. Well, in that case, I'm not going to spend a lot more time on that. Now, the programs that are what I call the historical programs, which are still available to this day, legacy programs, the ones that we had in place before COVID and the ones that we have after COVID, are threefold. So the SBA's loan programs are, number one, there's a guarantee program called 7A. Number two, there's a program called the 504 Certified Development Company Program, which is for long-term fixed-rate assets, meaning a piece of property, like a real estate. And the third one is the SBA microloan. I'm talking about each of these in a little bit of detail here. The 7A loan guarantee is the flagship program of the SBA. And all it is where a bank makes a loan to a small business owner or an entrepreneur, and the federal government steps in with a guarantee on that note. And by guarantee, just think of it like an insurance policy. It's an insurance policy that a lender can get that protects their loan if the small business owner stops paying them. And what they can do is, if they stop getting paid by the small business owner, which is you, the bank can actually apply to the SBA for relief on a guaranteed loan. And this all makes it more likely and more possible for an entrepreneur or a small business owner to actually get the loan. The small business owner pays a guarantee fee to have this happen. And that guarantee fee is usually around 3% of whatever the guarantee percentage is. What you're doing there, again, just to clarify completely, is you're buying for the bank an insurance policy on their loan from the federal government. If you don't pay on that loan, well, the government would make that payment and pay off that loan. Now, that's not a get out of jail free card for the small business owner. What it does mean is if that ever happens, now you owe the federal government the money, which isn't a wonderful place to be. No one wants to owe the federal government money. But if it's talking about the difference between getting the funding you need for your business to grow and not getting that funding, we certainly recommend that you consider it. It's very common. There's maybe 40 or 50,000 SBA loans every year nationwide. So it's very common. In Northern Ohio, there might be between 1,500 and 2,000 of these done. So a lot of the small businesses that get started utilize these guarantee loan programs. And just keep it in mind when you're talking to a lender, make sure that you ask about getting an SBA loan guarantee if it looks like you need one. Now, if you've got a loan request of your local lender, you go to the U.S. Bank branch there, 25th and Clark, or the Dollar branch right across the street, and it looks like you can get a conventional loan. By all means, I recommend that each one of you would do that because there's just no reason for the SBA to get involved unless we need to be. But if you're a startup or if your credit's not the best or whatever the case might be, and they say, hey, look, we'd like to do this for you, but it's going to be an SBA deal. Don't be afraid of it. It just means the government is going to be insuring that. Moving on, the SBA 504 program, as I mentioned, is a long-term, low down payment, fixed interest rate loan for a major capital expenditure. So someone who's buying a piece of real estate might be able to take advantage of that program. What's happening there is the government's actually borrowing on behalf of a small business owner. And because the government, at least in theory, will be there forever and is able to borrow very cheaply, that program tends to be a really good way for a small business owner to buy a piece of property for their business to be in at a really affordable rate and equity injection requirement. Now, last but not least is the SBA's microloan program. The microloan program is our alternative loan program for folks who are non-bankable. It focuses on small amounts of working capital, so $5,000, $10,000, $20,000, loan amounts that banks aren't particularly interested in doing because they're so small, but that it would be a really big burden on a small business owner to just advance on a credit card or something like that because if you carry credit card balances over from month to month, you end up paying 20% or whatever the interest rate is. Our microloan program is really positioned squarely in that market. It's designed for folks who can't get a loan from a bank because of one reason or another. The loan's too small or the credit's not good enough or there's not a track record or history, but a heck of a lot better in terms than credit card financing. So startups, credit challenges, minority and women-owned businesses, all of those sorts of things we direct towards the microloan if they can't get an SBA 7A loan guarantee. So those are the three big SBA loan programs. This is a great time for us to pause, make sure I covered this well. If I didn't cover anything, let me cover any of these loan programs well, or if you feel like you still have some questions to ask about it, please jump in right now. We'd love to hear from you and let me know, what your question might be. I'm going to pause for 10 seconds for us to do that. Or Randy, if you're still on the line, is there anything I missed there?
No, I think you got it.
Okay, good. I'm going to move to the next slide then. So why are these programs necessary? Programs are necessary because banks typically want a sure thing. A lot of times entrepreneurs that I talk to in the market, they are very critical of banks because they say, hey, look, banks don't support small business. And banks do support small business. The disconnect is that banks really want a sure thing. And we kind of want them to want a sure thing because when we make our deposits into our local bank, when you take your paycheck or whatever it is and put it in the bank, you don't want them to be taking undue risks with it. You don't want them to be investing in the local hardware store that might fail. You want that money to be protected. So banks want to be pretty sure about what they do with the money that you give them for safekeeping. So they don't make a lot of investments in small businesses when there's risk factors associated with those small businesses. And those risk factors could be lack of reserves, a lack of track record, lack of backup management. A lot of times small businesses are very exposed to competitive factors. You might have a Starbucks on a corner that pops up, and that would make the independent coffee shop on the other corner fail, not because the independent is doing a bad job, but just because people love Starbucks and they feel aligned to it and that sort of thing. So through no fault of the small business, they can sometimes fail just because of that. Sometimes small businesses are heavily exposed to economic cycles. They just don't have the cash to weather a down economic cycle, or they have concentrations of suppliers and customers where if one supplier fails or one major customer switches their business, the small business can fail. And lack of financial controls. A lot of times small businesses don't have a controller or a CFO or a chief financial officer or anything like that that can make sure they're not victims of fraud. So that's why SBA is involved here. We want to guarantee these loans to banks so that they consider these loans a short. Let's talk about eligibility for a second. This goes for all three of those small business lending programs. To be eligible for any SBA lending program, you need to be for-profit, to be small as defined by the SBA, to be engaged in business in the United States, have reasonable invested equity, utilize alternative financial resources to the extent that you have them, be able to demonstrate a need for the loan proceeds, have a sound business purpose for the proceeds, and not be delinquent on the existing debt obligations to the U.S. government. So if you are delinquent on your taxes or delinquent on childcare or something like that, you're probably not going to be eligible. We also don't make any loans to lenders, developers, or landlords, foreign-owned entities, pyramid schemes, gambling enterprises, clubs that discriminate, businesses engaged in teaching or instructing or indoctrinating in religion, businesses that present performances that one wouldn't want to admit to one's grandmother, political or lobbying activities, and speculative businesses. Any questions about eligibility? It sounded to me like everyone, here would be eligible. Any questions on that? The one thing that we get a lot of questions about is the developers and landlords thing, because people who want to buy houses and flip houses are typically looking for the best deal possible with the lowest equity, and that's an SBA deal in many cases. But we just don't do that. So if your stock and trade is going to be to buy a dilapidated house, fix it up, and sell it, it's not something the SBA is going to fund. It's a legal business. It's a lovely business to be in, but it's just not something the SBA would do. Additionally, like commercial real estate transactions where you're buying a strip center and you're going to rent it out to third parties, also not what the SBA does. We love real estate deals. We'll guarantee them. We'll do the 504 program for them, but it has to be owner-occupied real estate. So it has to be a property that your business will own and operate, and have people going in and out of, and provide a service, or make a product in that physical space. But it can't just be something you lease to some third party. So a little bit more about SBA loan activity. As I said, 7A and 504 loan volume is typically around 1,500 deals per year in Northern Ohio. Add to that another 100 to 200 microloans in North Ohio, and you get to a pretty good amount of volume of SBA loans that are out there. Loans are typically between $25,000 and $100,000, although the average loan size, at least in this most recent fiscal year, in fiscal 2020, did get up to $270,000 overall. But an average microloan is just $5,000 or $6,000. So it's definitely accessible amounts of money. But our loan maximums do go up to $5 million in a lot of cases. So there's some pretty large businesses that take advantage of SBA-backed financing as well. Top 25 lenders by loan volume include Huntington, Key, Growth Capital, U.S. Bank, Consumers National, PNC, First Commonwealth, TCF, which is also known as Chemical Bank, United Midwest Savings, Citizens Bank, and many others. So it's pretty easy to find a lender that will do an SBA loan. The hardest thing about it is to get your approval from the bank. One of the things that will help you get your approval is to have a good business plan. This is not a business plan class. For a business plan class, I'm sure Randy can support you on that on a one-on-one basis, or maybe he has a class on that as well. But just from my standpoint, here are some key points that I like to see in a business plan when I'm evaluating them. First of all, something in writing, something where your concept has been validated somehow. So not just that you have an idea, but you've actually taken the time to test it and make sure that people actually want the product or service that you're selling. I like a good evaluation of competitors, both because it shows that you've done your homework and seeing what else other people are doing out there and how the market is being addressed right now. But also because when you have a competitive analysis, it helps me as a lender figure out a little bit more about what your company is going to look like. Like you can describe things all day long, and I might have trouble following it, but if you say, like Ace Hardware, and I'm like, oh, okay, you're a hardware store. All right, I get it. And then you can kind of start bridging from there about how your hardware store is different from someone else's. So I think that evaluation of competitors is a great thing to do. Understanding your entry costs is something I like to see. What are the actual costs it's going to cost to start your business or grow your business? I like to see well-prepared financial projections. You don't have to be a CPA to do a business plan, but if you're anticipating getting a loan, making sure your business plan is buffed up with the best financial projections that you can is essential. I want to see that you understand the financial statements as well. Not just that you talk to a consultant and they did some stuff and you put it into your business plan, but that you really understand what the inputs are into the financial statements. You understand what makes them feasible and attainable, and how they work with each other. A successful business and a successful business loan application starts with an educated, well-prepared entrepreneur. So here are some ways to get well prepared. There are small business development centers, and there's the SCORE mentorship program. There's the Women's Business Center, all in the Cleveland area. Of course, you know well about the Hispanic Business Center here at 25th and Clark. But also there's the Urban League of Greater Cleveland, Cleveland State University, the Women's Business Center up on Euclid. All of these places have different levels of expertise in things and can provide different levels of training, and certainly urge you to look into them. The mentorship program is certainly something I recommend as well. At the small business development centers, you tend to find professionals, MBAs, financial, people with financial backgrounds. But at SCORE, which is the mentorship program in the upper right there, you'll actually find former business owners in many cases who successfully ran a business and sold it, or who are the CFO for a business. And that's really good experience to have, because if you want to talk to someone about, hiring your first employee, or, leadership, or things like that, the SBDCs can help. But I love the actual, storytelling and experience that the folks at SCORE have. So I recommend them too. You can also check out the SBA.gov business guide. I've been told that the SBA website is actually very helpful for many, many people. So look at the resources that we have posted there. I'm going to skip this slide because this is talking about the small business development centers and so forth in the area of Northwest Ohio that I also cover. You'll find SBDCs across the state. So let's talk about how do I get a loan, because that is what most people really want. So number one, building your expertise, attending classes like this, making sure you're really conversant in the sorts of questions lenders are going to ask you is very important. So the more you learn, the better off you're going to be. Knowledge is power. Number two, not being a startup, which is a little facetious. I recognize that many folks are going to say, well, wait a minute, I need to get a loan so I can be a startup. I need money so that I can start my business. And that's true. But if you're out there trying to get a loan from a bank or from a community development financial institution or some other lender, one of the things that really helps you successfully get a loan is to not be a startup. And that means that be 2 years into your business, show some profitability, show Schedule C income on your personal tax return, show something to show that you've been in business, that you've got a product people want, and then you have a conversation with your lender about how you expand your business, rather than jumping into the great unknown and asking the lender to come along for the ride. You're able to say, look, I was able to sell $500 a month of cupcakes over the last 2 years, but with a commercial kitchen and with some money for a website, I can double that. And so that makes a much better conversation than I sure hope I can sell cupcakes. So not being a startup, getting your business off the ground, showing some profitability on your tax returns. demonstrating your capabilities is a great way to put your foot forward as far as getting a bank loan or an SBA bank loan. Understanding how much you can afford. So, sometimes when folks talk to me, about getting a loan, they're going to say, how much money can I get? But the really question is, how much cash flow do you have, or will you have available? How much equity do you bring to the table? I think we've got a slide that's going to cover that a little bit more detail. But if not, cash flow is usually the thing lenders are looking at the most. When I say cash flow, what I mean is the amount of money you have at the end of paying all of your expenses every month, divided by the debt service on the loan that you're going to request. For example, if you have $1,000 of sales every month for your company business, you have $500 of expenses for it, you have $500 left every month. That's your cash flow. A lender, if they can see that on financial statements, is going to be pretty happy to make you a loan, the debt service of which is $300 a month, because you've got $500 every month to pay it. When you have cash flow, it's pretty usual that you'll end up getting a loan, as long as you can show that you've got the cash flow. Too many times businesses don't show they've got the cash flow. They don't want to pay their taxes. They don't show the cash flow on their financial statements. But if you've got cash flow, that's the key to getting a loan. The other thing that's key to getting a loan would be how much equity do you bring to the table. Now, lenders typically want to share the risk with the entrepreneur. So if you're talking to the financial center manager at Dollar Bank across the street, and you're looking to buy a piece of real estate for your business, you'll say, great, this all looks good. How much equity do you have to put in? And if you say, well, it's a $100,000 property and I need $100,000 from the bank, or $105,000 from the bank to cover my extra costs, you're probably going to get a no. Now, if you have $10,000 or $20,000 of your own money to put into it, or from money from investors or friends and family, you have a much better chance. So another way to think about how much money you can get from a loan is thinking about how much equity do you have. And you always want to have at least 10% to 20% of whatever project you have in mind in your own cash savings already, in order to leverage that additional 80% bank debt. So a $100,000 project, plan on having $10,000. But what if you've only got $1,000? Okay, well, if you've got $1,000, think about maybe a $5,000 microloan or a $4,000 microloan, because that brings you into the range of what you can afford based on your cash flow. Reviewing and optimizing your personal credit it can't be overstated, especially when lenders are evaluating smaller loans. They tend to just take the approach of looking at the personal credit of the owner and making a judgment based on that. So the one thing that you can do to boost your chances of getting a loan today is take a look at your personal credit report. Download your free credit report. I think it's freecreditreport.com. Download, TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. Take a look what's on there. I think you can pay extra to get your actual score, but you don't have to. Just take a look at what's on there, make sure it's valid and it's accurate, and take steps to bring down balances against limits, or pay off balances to just optimize that personal credit. Because when you go for a business loan, they will be looking at your personal credit really hard. So make sure you're ready for that. Make sure it looks good. Creating a great loan package is on an upcoming slide, and selecting a lender to apply with is on an upcoming slide as well. So these 6 points basically put you in a really good space to getting yourself a loan. This is just what an application looks like with ECDI, which is our micro lender in town. ECDI on 7000 Euclid Avenue at 216-912-5655. They're the contractor we have here in town that delivers SBA's micro lending product. So you can see here the loan size that they advertise, $75,000 all the way up to $350,000. The SBA has asked them to really focus on smaller loan sizes. And although they do have these maximum loan sizes, you can anticipate that many of their loans, maybe most of their loans, are under $10,000. If you go to the next slide on their application here, you can see that they've got a full list of things that you need to do. The first step is to contact them. The second is to get an application. You'll need an executive plan, a financial summary, personal tax returns, personal financial statements, schedule of collateral. Any lender you talk to will have a package of information online or on paper that you need to fill out in order to get your deal. The lenders will then be evaluating it They'll be doing that personal credit review, personal credit check, so you'll know that's happening. Look down here at the bottom in step 4. They're saying they're calculating the debt service coverage ratio. I told you what that is. It's just showing what the cash flow is of a business and making sure that on a monthly basis you can afford the debt that you're applying for. So this is a pretty good listing of the steps any lender would take to approve a deal. They may have you apply, they check your background, they underwrite the deal, meaning they make sure you've got the ability to repay. They do a formal approval process. They issue you a letter of intent or approval letter, and then they go to loan closing. My next slide here is creating a great loan package. So, once you've got yourself prepared, once you know what you're doing, anticipate these are the sorts of things that a lender is going to ask of you when you go to ask for a loan. That business plan, that business overview or history or executive summary, cost documents showing what you're going to spend the money on. So if you're going to buy a piece of real estate, maybe a letter of intent to purchase the real estate, or if you're going to buy leasehold improvements for property, a copy of a general contractor's estimate for doing so. Or if you're just buying equipment, show that. If you're just looking for a loan for working capital, talk about what you're going to use the working capital for, whether that's 3 months of rent, creation of a website. Just be very specific about what you're going to use the money for. There is an SBA loan application. I wouldn't necessarily say you need to do it. A lender will give it to you if they want to give that loan application to you, they will. But as far as just being prepared, go ahead and grab SBA Form 1919, fill it out. I know if I was a lender and someone came to me with that application, I'll be already prepared. That would be demonstrating a great level of preparation. Plan on having a personal financial statement. Personal financial statement is your own personal balance sheet. It would be signed by you and your spouse. If you've got an existing business, you'll need to bring your business's financial statements and current financial statements, any tax returns. For new businesses, projected financial statements are very important, and usually lenders like to see month-by-month financial statements. A statement of your ownership and affiliations, including the list of names and addresses of any subsidiaries or affiliated companies that you already have, your business certificate of a license. A resume is a key aspect of a great loan package because it shows your capabilities and your ability to run a business. Of course, your business lease, if you've got a lease that you've already entered into. And if you're a startup, that full business plan. For folks who aren't startups, you just need the business overview and history in point 1. But if you're a real full startup, you haven't ever made a dollar of revenue yet, you're going to want to give that lender a full copy of your business plan as well. If your next step is to actually find a lender to deliver a good application to, asking Randy or asking one of the SBDC directors about lenders they know in the community is a great way to go. I like to reward lenders that are volunteering their time or working closely with this SBDCs with loan referrals as well. But if that's not an option, you can also go to the SBA's Lending Tree sort of platform. It's not literally Lending Tree, but it's kind of like that. You go online to sba.gov, you click on Lender Match, and you'll be set up with a bunch of lenders. So check that out if that's of use to you. A lot of times I find that entrepreneurs have relationships with lenders already that they want to use. They just haven't had the preparation to actually go and talk to them yet. And sometimes they don't have the courage. Sometimes it's like, hey, I don't want to go bother my lender with this. And I'm like, well, that's what they do. Go talk to them. Sit down and have a conversation. They're not scary. All right. So a lot of times I get another question of, will I be approved? An approval of the loan is usually a function of these various factors. The most important one is your historical cash flow coverage. We already talked about that a couple times. The second most important thing is personal credit. The third thing is collateral. So many times, small business owners don't have sufficient collateral to cover the loan, but that's why the SBA is there. That's why we provide those loan guarantees to mitigate it. Character and experience is something that is obviously very subjective to see whether or not a lender is going to agree that you have the level of character and experience to successfully run your business. But there are things you can do to gain that experience. If you want to do a cupcake shop and you've never done one before, get a job at one and work there for a couple of years, or work there for a year, or volunteer there, or become a part owner of one or something. But there are ways you can show that you've gotten the experience that you'll need to be successful. If you don't have historical cash flow coverage, projected cash flow coverage, focusing on how it's feasible and attainable could be helpful. The amount of your equity injection, we talked about that. The more cash you have to put into a project, the better off you are. Your business's net worth and your personal net worth makes a difference in lending decisions. Obviously, lender isn't going to be as likely to make a loan to someone who's barely making ends meet today as they are to someone who has had a successful career and has put some money away. Lenders are much more interested in that second individual. Adverse conditions are sort of the wild cards. If you've got prior bankruptcy or you've got some kind of a prior loss to the government, those can be automatic no-goes. Lenders take personal bankruptcies, especially recent ones, very seriously. So if you've got one, it just could be a huge barrier to getting access to capital. And you may really at that point only have options to go to non-traditional lenders. Businesses that can show the ability to repay the debt usually can get a deal done. If you've got the ability to repay the debt on a monthly basis, in my experience, sooner or later a lender is going to say yes. But again, remember, banks don't want to take much risk at all. We already talked about how much money I can get in one of the prior slides. The secret sauce in any kind of lending is your cash flow should be 120% of the monthly debt service. Your monthly cash flow should be 120% of your monthly debt service. Finally, how much time is this going to take? And here I've given you some estimates of what the loan process time is going to take, but it's not necessarily time at the lender. At ECDI, at the microloan intermediary, it might be a month. But I've put 6 months here because I think, for someone who's interested in a microloan, I want you to be thinking in terms of your overall process and timeline. Maybe a month of those 6 months is actually at the lender itself, and the rest of it is going to be your own preparation, legwork, preparing your business plan, and so on. So, when people say, hey, how much time will it take? I'm like, well, where are you in the process? If I was going to start up a business, I wouldn't be thinking about, November or December. I would be thinking about the spring or maybe the early summer at this point to get it off the ground. Now, a bank SBA Express loan, I can't spell apparently, complete process. The bank Express loan might be a month. For real estate deals, you also have to factor in appraisal and environmental time. So, budget to purchase a piece of real estate, budget at least a couple months for the whole complete process. Maybe one of those months would be, at the bank being underwritten, but, the other month might be making sure your appraisal is lined up and your environmental and those sorts of things. Most of the variability in terms of time frame is actually based on the entrepreneur's preparedness and experience. So the better prepared you are, the more experience you have, the faster it will go. I'm going to make one digression here. We do have something called the Municipal Small Business Initiative Grant Program available in Cuyahoga County at this time. So this is a performance grant that you got to create a job or two. But generally what this is where you're applying for an SBA loan for a project that's going to create a job or two. The city of Cleveland, or in other cases, Cleveland Heights or Fairview Park, Shaker Heights, Lakewood, or Maple, will kick in an extra bit of equity injection into your project, which is really nice because it can help you qualify for a larger loan, or your loan would be more easy to repay because it's smaller. So the grant is a maximum of 15% of the project, or $50,000, whichever is less. You're still responsible for a 10% equity injection, and the SBA-backed loan covers the final 75%. So the Muni program is really a 15% grant in any project. So imagine like a $100,000 project to buy, a piece of property or something, or whatever the case might be. Expect a grant from the city of Cleveland of $15,000 if you enroll in this program. So it's not a miracle by any means. It's not like a $100,000 grant, which would be like sweet. But $15,000 on a $100,000 project might be able to get you that extra leverage to get the project off the ground. So it's a nice thing if you can apply for it. All right, last thing I don't want to underestimate is that it takes a lot of personal fortitude to get a loan, whether it's an SBA loan or a bank loan. Don't underestimate, the power of a positive outlook. Don't estimate the power of being polite. I've had a lot of situations where, you'll talk to an entrepreneur and they're very upset, they're very angry, and there's just no point in burning bridges behind you. If you're talking to a lender and they say no, that's not abnormal. So, you continue to be polite and say, hey, look, can I talk to you again, in 6 months or 9 months, when I've refined my business plan more? Thank you for your time. Those sorts of things. You might find out that, 30 days go by and that same lender might give you a call and say, hey, things have changed at my institution. Please come back in and let's get an application done. And just don't burn the bridges, because, the lenders that you work with are folks that want to get a deal done for you. And if you maintain those good relationships, I think it gets you a long way towards getting you where you want to go. Be flexible. If there's two ways of doing things and one way closes off, but the other way opens, don't be so inflexible that you can't do that. Just an example there would be, someone wants to have a restaurant business, but the startup costs for a restaurant are too high right now. And so, you go back to the drawing board and you say, well, could I do a small catering business, with $1,000 and just get that off the ground and do that for a year? And the lender says, yeah, I'd be happy to give you the $1,000. Think about that. Like, well, I know this isn't ideal, but is this a way I can get to where I need to go and keep making positive steps forward? And the last step there I have is relentlessness, because many entrepreneurs face many obstacles and high obstacles in terms of getting what they need to get to the next step. And it can be a tough process. You do get a lot of no, but you only need one yes to make that next step forward. So, I urge people to be relentless and to keep moving forward and keep finding ways to move forward, and really commit to the process of getting a loan, getting their business off the ground. So again, here's my contact information. I am Ray Graves at SBA.gov, Raymond.Graves at SBA.gov. My direct line is 522-4192, and I hope you will give me a call.
All right, Ray.
All right. Does anyone have any questions or anything? Thanks, Ronnie.
Thank you, Ray. Thank you, Ray. Thank you for that information. As Ray mentioned, any questions for Ray at this moment? I know we have one on the question and answers. Is it possible for the slide Create a Great Loan package to be sent to us?
Yeah, absolutely. You have it already, Randy, so you can forward that out to anybody you want.
We can forward that to you, absolutely.
Or email me and I can get it out to you as well.
Any other questions from our participants? As Ray, okay, yeah, I don't see it. As Ray, oh, we do. Ebony?
Hi, I got a question. Why is it so hard to find startup loans? I thought that.
Go ahead.
I thought that the SBA loans were, I thought they were out to help people who are, with a startup. If you're starting a business and, you need that help, even if it's just the 10,000 or 20,000, to really get your business off the ground. Why is that becoming, or to me, it's just been very hard to even get a loan? And I just don't understand. If you have startups, they're supposed to be there to help you with your startup. So I guess I'm just wanting to know, why is that process the way that it is?
Yeah, I understand. It is hard to get a startup loan. Before the economic crisis, about 1 in 5 of the SBA loans in our market were for what we called new businesses. And I think probably the majority of those were actually purchases of an existing business, which we still called a new business. So look, my guess would be before the crisis started, maybe 1 in 10 maximum of the SBA loans in our area went to true startups. That still would have been about 150 deals per year, but it's nowhere near as many startups as there actually are. Now, that doesn't include the ECDI, the microloan deals, and I think at least half of their deals are for startups. So add another 75 deals or so to that mix, and you end up having, probably a couple hundred true startup loans in Northern Ohio every year. which is a lot, and then it's also not. It's like 200 sounds like quite a few, but if you spread that out between Toledo and Cleveland and Akron, then you start dividing it up, and you're like, well, that's not a lot. The reason is everybody wants a sure thing. The lenders that we guarantee, we never guarantee 100% of their debt. We always guarantee some percentage of it, so they still have a loss share. So yeah, it's a problem. I want to see more startups, but it's all about convincing the lender that you are not going to fail, and they're not going to have a situation where they have to, send a bill to the SBA and get a recovery from us. We're there if they do, but I think they're reluctant to do that. And I don't want to overlend either. Like, I don't want deals to fail. So I want people to be as sure as possible. So I want it to be kind of hard. I don't want it to be too easy. Otherwise, I would have lots of people trying to start businesses that ultimately didn't succeed. And then I would have all these businesses that the SBA was after for recovery on these guarantees. Ultimately, we want everyone who starts with an SBA loan to be successful. But Ebony, you're right. It's hard, and it's especially hard if you're coming from a place where you don't have a lot of financial support behind you, and many communities are that way. So it is hard. That's my answer. I don't know if it's a great answer, but what do you think, Randy?
So the way I break it down to the clients that I work with is that, hey, when you're a fresh startup, you have zero credit, you have nothing, right? And so if you leave your job and you're going to start this business, you have no way to prove that you're making money to pay your loan, right? So a bank, I don't want to flat out say that banks don't care about your business. But banks are in the business of making money, right? They're not in the business of losing money. So you have to be able to prove that you're going to be able to pay X amount of dollars back with the interest that they expect, right? So this is where the reality that we live in. And so with our clients, we try to figure out, okay, what is the best way to find this funding? Sometimes we have to think outside of the box. Sometimes we have to wait sometimes. Other times, we just got to look at what other organizations are around there. How do we bootstrap this basically? How do we start? What is the minimum viable product that we can offer to get the business actually off the ground and running and produce some or generate some income so that then we can go up to the lenders, right? I can tell you right now, I have many clients who have, obviously they guarantee those first couple loans through their personal name, their personal credit. But I'll tell you one thing, I can think of one client right now that got a startup, something quick. It was a personal loan that they acquired, paid it off very quickly, and immediately started creating some type of credit for his business. And within a year and a half, 2 years, he was able to acquire the equipment he needed to actually help him grow even faster. So we have a big dream. Now, that is our end goal, but we got to put the objectives to get to that point, right? So if by year 3, we want to be $1 million company, we know that by year 1, year 2, we should be hitting some metrics to get to that point, right? We can't always hit that goal immediately. It's actually not the most common thing. The most common thing is you work in increments to get to that point. So
Most businesses start with the friends and family investment. That's the start. I'll say that I think it's easier to get a loan to buy an existing business than it is to get a loan to start your business from scratch. But one of my colleagues said that she did some investigation into it and found that buying an existing business was no less risky than starting up from scratch. And that sort of makes sense because buying an existing business is expensive and you're going to, be buying it with a lot of debt. Still, I will leave that out there for your consideration. If you're having a difficult time getting a startup loan, maybe you can identify an existing business to purchase. But just know you're inheriting, whatever reputation that business has, and you're also paying for the goodwill of the company. But it could be a strategy to look into.
Absolutely. And for those, we can help you figure this out. We can navigate the waters. We know the ecosystem, and we can figure out how to either bootstrap it or how to find the funding or how long will it take us to get the funding. So this is something we can definitely work in. For those of you who need business plans or financial projections, we do that in-house absolutely for free as well. We don't write your business plan. We help you with your business plan. That's important. So I'll leave it at that. Any other questions or concerns? Okay, I don't see any hands and I don't see any open mics. Ebony, you have an open mic. Do you have any other questions or concerns?
No, I was just going to say thank you to you guys for even answering my question. But I also feel like, I know you were saying with getting a loan for a startup. I guess with my company, yes, it is a startup, but I am also already, we make about $5 to $8 grand a month. I know that doesn't seem like it's a lot to those companies making $100 grand a month, but we just—
That's a lot.
That is a lot of money. That's a lot of money.
So we're doing good because we're in construction, and a lot of people want their homes fixed before the winter. So we do a lot of work. But I'm just, like I said, I'm just having a hard time with, I rent a lot of material that I would prefer to already have so that I'm not renting constantly. I do a lot of concrete work and I rent the machinery. I rent trucks, I rent dump trucks, I rent, stuff that I could buy and have. And I guess that's why I'm looking for loans. I'm looking for a loan where I can get the equipment that I need, that I'm not renting all the time, because I always use it.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect loan request right there.
Absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit more, or talk to Randy about it, because it sounds to me like you've got a very legitimate business that's making money. You replace one of your expenses, which is rent, with debt service. So assuming there isn't anything else, you should be able to get a loan for that. That seems to me to be pretty reasonable.
I thought so too.
Yeah. Well, let's speak together then in person, or again, I'd urge you to talk to Randy as well, and take a look at your financials and see what the trouble is, because it seems very reasonable to me, a very reasonable request. Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. We are at the 2:01 mark, so we are going to close it here. Ray, thank you one more time. Excuse me. For being with us, and for all of you, you guys will receive an email with the slides for today. If you have any questions or concerns, you can feel to reach out back to me or Ray Graves, which is information will be in the slides as well. All right. So everyone, take care. See you soon.
Thanks so much, HBC. Appreciate it.